Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and today's show is very, very important for all of us. We'll be focusing on our responsibility. Yes, many times we are eager to blame somebody for our predicament. We start identifying ourselves as victims. We feel a sense of helplessness, and that is an integral part of the way democracy functions, whether it is America or India. But there is a demand which democracy or democratic system puts on our shoulders, and that demand is to be proactive in playing our respective role. And that role also connects us with the way we can determine the kind of laws that would govern us. And if we find there is a need of some change or tweaking some of the policy which are formed in a way that takes away a sense of fairness, then we come together and work in that direction. That is what is the way in which democratic system empowers us. And in order to become aware, we need people who have worked with the system, who have done their part, and that understanding is definitely a source of inspiration as well as it enriches us. And while I open the forum and introduce my panelists today, I am also aware of the debate that always surrounds us after any instance, as we unfortunately have seen that happen in Texas, shooting of innocent kids, and then the discussions about gun control laws again and again comes to the fore. But there are other areas, other issues which are also important as far as the way law is working out. And I have the pleasure first of welcoming President of Fair Franchising Initiative, Prakash Shah ji, to our studio.
Namaste, Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And we are also delighted to be joined on Zoom with Chairman as well as Vice Chairman of FFI, Maulink Patel ji, namaste. Anil Patel ji, namaste. Namaste. So Anil ji is definitely a senior person, and sometimes seniority and seriousness go hand in hand. So you smile less, but your presence conveys a lot. But I'll begin with Prakash ji. Prakash ji, talking about having an assumption that yes, this is the law and there is no way now this is going to guide me, and if it is suffocating me somewhere, still I'll have to maneuver Absolutely. My way of operating. Absolutely. But what is at the as the seed of this fair franchising initiative is a paradigm shift where Correct. You are looking at the big picture and trying to see how you can work with the authorities. Yes. So talk to me about how it was formed and why it was formed.
Yes, so let me just say that impacting public policies is a sign of aware and enlightened citizenship, and it is a must. Two things I will say over there. First, there is a need to know your legislator. If you have a local senator, assemblyman, you need to get to know them. You need to learn to communicate with them. They are interested in your views, no question. But you need to take that initiative and you need to start to communicate with your legislator. Second thing is, you have to understand how the public policy is formed, how the legislation is developed, and how things can be changed. I mean, this type of, I would say, technology of participation in citizenship, everyone must be aware, and that is what leads to important changes. Okay? Now, going back to fair franchising, there should be fairness in everything, in all matters. That's a given. But in franchising, what is happening is that when the system changes, when a drastic changes taking place in the industry, in the system, then things have to be adjusted. We cannot go on doing things the way we did it before. For example, 20 years ago, there were no OTAs or online travel agencies. Today, there are a lot of online travel agencies, a lot of business that a franchisee is able to get comes from a Booking.com, Expedia, people like that. But this is not free. You have to pay them 15%, 12%.
So allow me to interrupt you, Prakashji, and I'll bring in Anil ji, who is chairman of this Fair Franchising Initiative, and I would just request you, Anil ji, to help some of our viewers understand when we say franchise, what it takes as far as from the point of view of an entrepreneur, the advantages as well as the binding sort of riders which become a part of the way you would operate as an entrepreneur by taking any franchise. Just general for some lay person who would like to know more about because there are multiple business avenues where franchise comes into play, whether we are talking about Dunkin' or we are talking about motels. We will focus more on motel side, but just help us sort of understand it a little bit.
Yes. What it is, the franchisor is the big company, what we call the brand. So, for example, McDonald's. So if you have a hamburger business and if it's called Prakash and Anil's hamburger business, you're not going to attract a lot of people because nobody knows Prakash and Anil. However, McDonald's, everybody knows. So in order for a individual business owner to operate a McDonald's, he has to enter into a franchise agreement, which is a licensing agreement, basically, which states that you need to follow certain policies and procedures. Your product has to be consistent so that when you go from one McDonald's in New Jersey to a McDonald's in Florida, that the product is same and consistent to the level of including, the cups, the straws, everything. So it's a uniform way of doing business so that when one person walks into a McDonald's anywhere in this state, there's a lot of equal and similarity and expectation that are available. So the business owner is called the franchisee, and the company, the brand, is called the franchisor. And time to time, the franchisor will, do public advertising on television, on social media, highway billboards, etc. So basically, you're getting to use the name recognition and the product and service that's available. And that's what creates a demand. So from the positive standpoint, it's a name recognition which drives in business. The negative point is that the policies and procedures and standards sometimes become cumbersome, and in some instances may not make sense for that specific business. But regardless, they're dictating the policies and procedures in the name of product consistency or name of standards.
Yeah. Anil, you have explained it so well. I really would like to clap for giving us that clear vision in terms of the relationship as well as the advantage of having brand recognition, but having cumbersome procedures also coming with it. But now, MAULESH ji, as Vice Chairperson for Fair Franchising Initiative, allow me to submit the idea of being a franchise owner involves that you are already anticipating that there is a cumbersome procedure with its own limitations, which are given as a structure when you accept and you sign a contract or the way you want to do the business. So if, just as a layman, I'm thinking, and someone who is very scared of the way legal framework operates, and you feel, they have these clauses as an integral part of the contractual formalities, then let me stay out of it. So if you are not out, if you are in, that means you have accepted it. Now, what this Fair Franchising Initiative is attempting to do is to remodel, reshape, or create awareness that this is not working properly with due fairness for those who are franchise owners. What is this whole scenario and where we are in terms of, as you guys, as a team, taking it up as a cause that requires your full-time attention and a sort of what should I say? A movement, I would say,
Yes.
To reshape the and make it a level playing field. So, Maulesh ji.
So Ashok ji, let me just go back a little bit. As you said, this is a matter of contracts, right? And as we all know, America is a nation of laws and contracts. Almost every single state in America will give very high priority to contracts between two entities. Now, when it comes to franchising, these contracts are often written for a very long period of time, which, I would say 20, even some cases 25 years. Now, technology changes and the business environment changes. Often these contracts are written one-sided to favor the franchisors, and often these contracts allow franchisors to change the terms of the contract without the other party agreeing to. If there was a contract written, there was to be abided by both sides, which is something that we all agree. Once you sign on that, that should be pretty much acceptable. But in last 10 years, we have last 10, 15 years, we have seen emergence of Google, Facebook, Twitter, right? There was not there when some of these contracts that exist today were written. So the environment changes. Often there is a pressure driving up the big brands from their shareholders and investors that requires them to earn extra revenue for their shareholders. So these big companies, once they have option to change this contract, they will change it because they can. And they have some contracts requirements where they put at disadvantage the very small business that is their biggest investor into the whole franchise system. Now, as we know, and I would say that fairness, right? Fairness will be only a concept when both sides are agreeing to play by a fair and same rules of the game. Once one side can change the rules of the game in the middle of the game, I would say that relationship will be always a fruitful relationship. Even it would be a successful relationship that will restrict the ability for the whole system to go to its fullest potential. So there is an inherent need of fairness that is required in this kind of contractual relationship, especially between big businesses and small businesses. And we see this game playing all over the country, right? We are now, to say that we are a nation of fine prints, and in those contracts there are so many fine prints. How do these franchise businesses start, right? Often the entrepreneurs who get into this franchise business are immigrants who don't really have much of the knowledge of the legal system. And often they follow the instinct of trust rather than legal forte. When a small entrepreneur comes from India or any part of China or any other country, what they will do is take more risk than a normal other person who is kind of aware of or have experienced similar situation in their life. Most of the business, from Indian American community in particular, have not seen the situation. That's why they get into this franchise agreement more willingly than other entities. So that's one of the issue that affects our community of immigrant origin very particularly.
Yeah, Maulink, you have said it so well, and I think we will learn a lot by the end of this program. And where we are right now is the hint which we gather from Maulesh ji has resulted into a lot of disruptive environment for franchise owners as far as hotel industry is concerned. And I have Maulink Patel, Anil Patel, and many times we consider motel as synonymous with Patel. So, and there are many Indian Americans who are hotel owners, and a lot are running a successful franchise, and many of them maybe 20, 50, that maybe more numbers. So it is very much relevant for the Indian American community to become aware of the call it plight which the franchise owners are facing. And the good thing is they have proactively decided to figure out a way which would not put this equation of big entrepreneur and small entrepreneur in a way that would be detrimental to the interests of the franchise owner. Prakashji, I think I'm getting it right, and then
yes.
I would request you now to take us to your collective contribution, which resulted into New Jersey Assembly Bill A 1958, which is passed by Assembly Judicial Committee. What is this bill, and how Anil ji and MAULESH ji and other members of FFI contributed in coming up with what was needed, and how was the procedure of convincing the legislatures?
Yes. So what we have done is we have come up with a few issues within franchising which would lead to fairness in the future. So the burning issues, I'm not going to go into the details of that because that gets into technical jargon, but we have focused on 6 or 7 key planks which we need attended to. And we cannot see this attended to by a contractual relationship, which otherwise should prevail. But so therefore, we have sought to seek legislation. Now, in order to develop this legislation, we worked with the Senate Assembly Judiciary Committee.
Sorry to quick interruption. So some of our viewers may not understand what is the problem. So just define the problem which led
The problem
to this.
is that, as MAULESH described, that the franchisors have a right to change the contract at will, and that's what written into the contract. Now that's not a contract, because if you and I enter into an agreement,
dictatorship.
But if you have a right to change it to whatever you wish to do down the road, then it is not a contract. But unfortunately, that's how it is. And it is when a franchisor-franchisee relationship starts, it is take it or leave it. You see, so you need to have a certain brand, you need to have a certain name. You want to operate as a Marriott or a Hilton or a Choice Hotel, then you have to accept whatever they say. So it is a tortured relationship to begin with. Now, as you work in that relationship,
Sorry, based on our conversation before this formal conversation, you were mentioning about some clause which are binding for the franchise owner to deal with certain contracts which are charging exorbitantly.
Correct.
Would you mind sharing any of
sure.
those examples?
So, and that is one of the issues. The issue is that when the franchisor can mandate who you buy things from or who you get things done from, and that is written into the contract, that as part of a quality standards, they could decide how you're going to enforce that quality. So, for example, let's say they change their logo. If they change the logo, then everybody has to change the sign. So if I'm a franchise owner, I'm putting all this money into it. I put it on the building, and I borrowed money, and I've given personal guarantees. So I'm taking a huge risk. Now the franchisor comes and says, you change the sign. If I change the sign, I go to the local person. He says, okay, it'll cost you $15,000 to change this sign. But the franchisor says, no. You cannot go to the local person, you have to go to one of these 3 national people. So you go to one of the 3 national people and they say it's going to cost you $60,000, not $15,000. Now you say, well, that's a lot of money. You say you engage one of the national person, he in turn will contact the same local person who was going to do it for you for $15,000. So what basically you're getting the same service, same sign, and you're paying $60,000 instead of $15,000, which is not fair. So you ask, why is that happening? And you find out that a large amount of money is going in what you could call kickback to the franchisor. And that is the reason why you're getting penalized in such a way. Now, it is not just the sign. It's that hundreds of other things that the same thing keeps repeating. So the franchisor, in addition to taking a hefty franchise fee, is also doing all these what you may call hera-fairy through the back door, picking up monies, this and that and other ways. And that is where the unfairness comes in. Because it is not just the plain agreement okay, I give you the franchise, you generate the business, you do this much business, you pay me this much. No, it is now getting into all these side businesses where they're trying to put their hand in your pocket in multiple different ways.
Yeah.
And
So-
then you cannot survive as a business.
Absolutely.
Because now you're paying every which way. And then that is where the unfairness comes in.
Yeah. So what we learn from Prakashji, it is, to use a mild term, you will have your blood boiling because this is your hard-earned money. You have to take care of your employees. You have n number of bills that are waiting to be paid. And if you don't run your business properly, it not just affects you as an entrepreneur, it affects the whole economy in the long term. So now, Anil Patel ji, you have been in the business for many years and you have mentored many young entrepreneurs also. Talk to me about the way legal framework functions, and then the way we understand there is lobbying that goes on, and even to persuade, to communicate, to convince leaders sometimes requires the kind of methods which would be more oriented in favor of people who have more resources. So when now this bill is going to Commerce Committee, what is it that gives you confidence that it will go through, and overall your impression about the way legal framework as far as formulation of policies functions? And here we are talking only about New Jersey, and the same thing is a pressing problem for franchise owners in different states also. Correct. So are you also in touch with people who would like to see similar changes in their state, Anilji?
Yes, it's the same issue, different states. So yeah, and just like MAULESH and myself, we have businesses, hotels in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, whether it's mine or my family-owned business. So the issue is the same, but you're in a different state. And most of the states, it's a similar language in terms of the franchise law. But the confidence I have is that when you start talking to lawmakers, assemblymen and senators, and say this is not fair, well, the only way you can sell unfairness is if there's validity in what you're saying. For example, if Hilton Hotel says to MAULESH and me and Prakash Shah that you have to use our credit card processing system, we'll say, wait a minute, you're selling a hotel room. You're selling hospitality service and hospitality theme. The customer has no idea if you're using Chase credit card processing or Marriott's vendor who is approved, and it's costing more, because to the customer, the rate is the same and the product and the service is the same, regardless of if you're using a credit card merchant processor that's approved by Marriott, so that they can get kickbacks and compensation. So to the lawmakers, we're saying, look, if Rita's Water Ice is in the business of selling water ice, the taste of the water ice, the temperature of the water ice, and the size of the container is more important to the customer. Nobody really even knows who's processing the credit card fees and the services. So the franchise companies unfairly, through their policies and procedures and standards, as MAULESH said, it's not a equal legal document. So they will come in and say, we need these changes. For example, during COVID time, it has become very difficult to maintain employees. It's a labor shortage and a lot of people are not working. The franchise companies dictate to us and say, you have to make sure you have safe policies and procedures, and you have cleanser, and you cleansed all of the rooms and done extra steps. At the same time, we're not having employees because there's a labor shortage and the labor rates are going up. So the franchise company will lay off their own corporate people they have inspectors that are supposed to go to the individual hotels and periodically inspect the service and the quality and the product level. So since they don't want to incur the expense of their labor, they will outsource that. But we cannot outsource our business. So it's a way where they basically dictate things which are really unfair. And it's easy for us to convince lawmakers that in the shortage of labor, they're telling us to do more things and insisting on more standards, and that's not fair. Similarly, a franchise company is their base. It's a simple business. You give clean room, clean bathroom, good service, and that's about it. But the franchise companies have made things so difficult, and the only reason they're difficult is because there's money involved in it. They're looking at it and saying, how do we create additional income? If Maulink Patel has agreed to pay us 12% of his gross revenue as a franchise fee, that's fair. Maulink agreed to 12% and he's paying 12%. However, the franchise companies have figured out a way to create ancillary income by dictating their vendors, dictating the products that we give guests from specific vendors. So when we go back to the lawmakers and say, look, this doesn't make any sense. I'll give you one example. Maybe 20 years ago, when the FedEx, with the overnight delivery and carriage business was just starting out, one or several of the franchise companies said you have to put a UPS box or a FedEx box because they thought that was a great moneymaker. Basically, they wanted to use our real estate and our lobby space for free and have a FedEx and say, now we're providing, we meaning the franchise Holiday Inn or Hilton is providing a service of overnight packaging to the customers of the hotel. But in reality, those overnight servicers were paying the franchise company some money to have their boxes, or the sort of like the mailbox that you drop a mail in at these facilities. So they were creating ancillary income, and we're forced there to maintain it. Our employees have to keep an eye on, the paperwork and all of these other procedures.
Absolutely.
Going back to the lawmakers, it's very easy to convince them when something doesn't make sense. And basically, a lot of these things and the unfairness do not make sense.
I totally agree with you, and I think it definitely doesn't make sense that you make use of your authority, position, or power to exploit others, and rather than being fair to them as per the need of this kind of mutual understanding, which clearly lays out the percentage of profit that you are due to get, and then you try to create this kind of ancillary income is not in just good taste, but somewhere it is also taking advantage of the legal loopholes.
Correct.
And I think you are trying to fill that. We are just running out of time, but I would real quick have 30 seconds for you, Maulesh ji. Working with pure intent seems to be the key to this problem, or there is malafide intentions in some way camouflaged to flow. So going little away from this conversation, what is the one key point that you have learned as hoteliers for success in this field?
So one thing I would say this, right? Our community is very successful in this industry, despite of the challenges that you see in franchising. And I do not think that one thing that I learned is I do not think that our community stops here. Our community, especially when it comes to hospitality industry and some retail industry, has a lot further to go. Innovation will be key for the next generation and the next chapter of success of our community in this industry.
Wonderful.
So what happens is when you have this many of unfair contracts, hey, tomorrow somebody wakes up and say, hey, now, you know what, this system doesn't work. Let's create a new innovation, new system. So at the same time, our goal is we are making sure that innovation is playing key role in the future.
Wonderful.
So that's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There is so much inspiration that comes to us from Prakash ji. Anilji and Mauleshji, and we'll have more conversations down the line. But for now, I really want to applaud you guys for taking up this cause through FFI. Prakashji, thanks for joining us. Mauleshji and Anilji, thank you very much, with lots of good wishes for all of you and FFI. And thanks to all of you for being a part of this conversation. This is Ashok Vyas. Namaste.